Welcome to Weird Web Radio, an explorer's guide to hidden worlds of the paranormal and occult, reality-expanding experiences, and the downright weird and bizarre. With your host, Lonnie Scott.
And we were recording again.
Yep.
Joey Morris, welcome to Weird Web Radio.
Now you can hear me. Thank you very much.
Yay!
Mercury retrograde, everybody.
Yeah, tech gremlins again. Mm-hmm. Maybe I didn't make enough offerings to the Fae. Anyway, thank you for going through those hoops. That was fun. For everybody listening, so we don't talk about all of our technical words.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be back later.
More offerings to the Fae, quick.
Quickly. Butter, stat. For everybody listening, this is Joey Morris. Joey is the author of the new book, Celtic Hedge Witchery, A Modern Approach. I love the artwork on this cover, by the way. And the color work, that green and black, that is beautiful. Joey Morris is a priestess of the Morrigan and a hedge witch who's been on the path of Celtic witchcraft for over 25 years. She specializes in spirit work, shadow work, and healing. Joey runs the popular Starryeyedsupplies YouTube channel, which boasts over 17,000 subscribers. I'm one of them. As well as her own blog and witch supply store, Starryeyedsupplies. She lives in Plymouth, England. Find her at starryeyedsupplies.com. All right. Thanks for being here. I'll see you later.
And we're done.
All right. First thing I usually like to ask around here is pretty much the same for the last several years. Have you ever experienced a haunting or some sort of paranormal phenomenon? I'm talking about uninvited. Like, because we're all into the things where we summon stuff and do whatever we do, but I'm like, shit you didn't expect.
Yeah, all the time. So
all the time.
So in this particular flat, we have a ghost called, that we call Ethel, and we're fairly certain it's an elderly lady with all of her cats. And so if the light in front of me goes off at any point, my hands are back here. It'll be her messing with it. And she throws things around the flat and reminds us that it's her home first, not ours. So
is that how you settled on the name Ethel? Do a little research on who lived there before?
No, it's just the name that came through when we sort of focused on it, because upstairs deal with her as well, because this used to be one house and now it's two flats.
I call those chopped up buildings, the old places that get turned into multiple family living situations. So is the ghost haunting you or the people upstairs or downstairs or by your side? I don't know.
I think it's more the property. I mean, we both have had experiences with things flying off tables, and I'm the only one that has lights turning on and off. So I guess more me, but then maybe more because I'm aware of it more than upstairs are muggles. So, they are aware of it, but not so much.
So it's lights turning on and off. Is that basically the gist of it?
Yep. And then I will quite often see cats out the corner of my eye and then turn around and they're not there. And one of them in particular is the same colouring as my cat, so it gets me every single time. Because I think it's her. Cats. And then I turn around and nope, there's nothing there.
I feel like I've asked this question enough times, and cats are a popular haunting kind of thing, I guess. Common. I feel like there should be like a paranormal TV show, like Ghost Cats. People just going, no, just paranormal investigators walking around in the dark with night vision going.
And there's like, they put bottles on tables and wait for them to just get slowly edged off tables. Like the ghost cat.
If you're here, knock this off the table.
Exactly. You see this little milk bottle? Just shove it off.
All right, free idea, folks. We just want to watch.
But knowing cats, they wouldn't do anything while you're recording, though, on purpose.
On purpose, right? If you could just see their smug, invisible selves.
Yeah. We feel very strongly that there's a cat here, but we can't prove it.
So you're haunted by a cat? No, that's the living one.
Yeah.
We're sure there's one here. We just can't prove it.
Yep.
That's fantastic. So we've come up with a new show idea already. See, we're being productive. 5 minutes in. Since you use the word witch, would that be a fair way to identify you?
I think so, yeah. I struggle a bit with labels and things because it's never something that I necessarily wanted to call myself, although I quite like the word witch. I like reclaiming it because there's so much history and so much power behind the word witch, and there's almost like a legacy behind it as well. So I enjoy that word very much. So yeah, I would say so.
Now, when you say reclaiming it, I wish this is a moment. I wish where we were showing the video, the look you got.
Oh dear!
like the force of 1,000 generations of witches just winked. You know, like
That's terrifying.
I like it. I'm broken though. You say reclaiming, so I mean, and you hinted at it with some words there, but like, let's unpack that. What do you mean when you say reclaiming? Because I think that's going to further define what witch means to you.
So there's obviously a long history of the word witch being used as an insult, being used as almost like a label of criminology and being against the church. And so
she's a witch.
Yeah.
She turned me into a newt.
Yeah, I was going to say, I got better.
Yeah.
That's immediately what went through my head. I got better.
Yeah, me too.
And it is such a bloodthirsty history, though, on the more serious side of it.
Right.
That so many men and women suffered under the usually false accusation, because it was usually nothing to do with why they were actually being accused. So it's also got this weird political agenda behind it, but also kind of like it wasn't true. It was false. Probably 90% of the time it was being used as an accusation, which is well documented now. So I think that's unfortunate when we're reclaiming it as well, that there is this idea that either people see it as being evil, or you are... I've got a small cat yelling at me from the floor now. Stop.
I can't hear it.
Okay.
Is it really there?
I don't know. I'll ask her. Are you really there?
Knock something off the table. You know?
If things start going flying, it's your fault.
I'll take that credit.
Yeah, but you've got either you're evil or you're a fraud as attached to that label. And then you've got all the very Hollywood version of witches, which is still persisted because of how strong an idea witches are, even in the modern consciousness. So people have a lot of feelings about it. It was always something that really drew me to it. I always liked the Disney villains, so what that says about me, I don't know, as a child. And I always thought of it as being quite freeing and quite liberating. So you do take on this like mantle of history, though, when you take it on. And I think that is one of the reasons when people say you can't be political. I'm like, taking on the word witch is a political act in and of itself. So,
yes.
You're not escaping it.
I do think, I know there's been a lot of debate back and forth by some people in the witchcraft community about that. is being a witch political in some way? I don't know how far one way or another. I'm not sure that it demands a certain form of politics necessarily. I've got no dog in that fight exactly. I am sympathetic to it, of course. But I do think the minute you decide to take on the title witch, you have othered yourself somehow in your community. You've made a statement of a degree of power that I think is taken lightly a lot. And I'm not sure that serves the people who take it lightly well.
No, I don't think it works out well for people who don't really consider what it means to be it. And usually people's lives tend to fall apart when they do that, thinking about it. There's been some really interesting examples of that. There was a woman who was on Instagram, I want to say 5 years ago, but with COVID it might be longer because that warped time for me. And she was going by witch, but wasn't really, and was selling crystals from China and pretending that they were one-offs and special. And she got found out. And it just ruined her because the truth always comes out in these situations. And then the consequences came in with a bat. So, it's interesting. It's an interesting thought about what happens if you take on something and you don't respect it.
Yeah. Everyone's mileage will vary, right? You never know, good or ill, what will come of your experiments or the choices you make. I just think it's worth considering. We're in a very peculiar time. I'm 47 years old. I was never raised in any Christian environment, never been baptized. I had sort of the freedom to choose my own way. And paganism, witchcraft, the occult was always the direction I went. I can tell you, and listeners who, especially the younger ones, it is a radically different environment now than it was in the mid and late 90s, early 2000s. You couldn't safely be out as a witch in a lot of places still, or even a pagan for that matter. And now it's almost celebrated in a lot of places. It's interesting to see that shift. When I can see there's a tarot coloring book in Walmart, that blows my mind that is a real thing.
Yeah. You see a lot of the little mini spell kits in places now as well. That's a fairly new phenomenon. Words. Mercury retrograde. No. And I have mixed feelings about seeing those little spell kits and things, but it is a kind of freedom that we can do it. Yeah.
What is your feeling about the I don't know what to call it, the commercialization? I don't know if that's fair, because it's always been sort of, you got to buy books and tools and everything, but the mass market commercialization maybe of witchcraft.
See, for me, it swings and roundabouts, because I think there are beneficial aspects to it, and then I think there are detrimental aspects to it. Like, on the benefit, you're normalizing things a little bit. Like, it doesn't become quite as niche. It reaches more people, and then more people might start investigating, or might having a look around. This is somebody who sells things on Starryeyedsupplies, right? So,
right.
I know how I feel a spell item should look and feel magically before I will send it out. And you are not going to get that from a mass-produced whatever.
Sure.
So on the swing of that, if your first experience with any kind of spell kits is this really awful mass-produced thing with energy, even with energy attached to it, which is not great, because depending on where it's been mass marketed, that's a detriment. So if you have a negative experience with that the first time, it might put you off. You might feel nothing from it. It might just feel lifeless. which would be a shame. And then you might think, oh well, there's nothing to this then. Um, I guess the people who are meant to find it will find it, though, and the people who are meant to investigate and really reach deeper and decide for themselves will, and the people who are just looking at it from surface level for whatever reason will wander off again. So I guess what will be in that situation, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know that there is a right answer to that, honestly. We've got the forces that are just copying, pasting many of the dangers and insults and stuff of the satanic panic are alive and well again with a new glossary in many cases, which is scary on one end, but on the other end, it's still the fact that I see mass market commercialization tells me that their message isn't as powerful as it once was, maybe, or as influential among just your general population of people, which gives me more hope than maybe I should have. I don't know.
There's no way of knowing at this point, is there?
Right. When did you know you were a witch? When did that happen for you?
Oh, I've been calling myself a witch for since childhood. I was an interesting child.
Were you?
Yeah.
What'd you do that was so interesting?
Well, at age 7, I knew how to use a pendulum without ever being taught.
Yeah. Did that scare anyone when they saw you doing it?
Like, oh yeah,
mom, dad walk into the room and shit their pants, or
well, technically, yes. My mother was funny about it, but the pair of them were into occult stuff as teenagers, so it's a bit like hypocritical much.
Nice. So you got to grow up with parents that were already into all this?
They weren't really into it by the time they were adults, but they both considered themselves to have gifts, if you like. So my mother believed herself to be clairsentient and clairaudient, and my father
knows things and hears things. That's what that means.
Yes. Sorry, big words for Mercury.
Those pesky Claires coming back to us again.
But there's a lot of seeing ghosts and stuff on the Welsh side. So yeah, on the paternal line on my father's side.
Got it.
So they were all deeply interested into that and did all of the Ouija boards and told us all horror stories about the Ouija boards as kids. I won't touch one. So they did their work with that.
You won't touch a Ouija board?
No.
What?
No, I think...
Why? Why?
Because I think there is such an egregore around a fear around that in modern society that I think that regardless of whether or not you're actually attracting a spirit or you're tapping into the societal fear of something, you're asking for a negative experience with it.
I have, of all the things I have heard, I've never heard that theory, not once.
No.
No. Now, for folks who don't know, what's an egregore?
So an egregore in that circumstance would be like an energy or entity, if you like, created by the mass fear around something. So many people having the fear and the belief that something is evil or something is negative or something is demonic, and all of that being channeled into one essence, and that can... I don't know that I would say it can become sentient, but kind of somewhere in the middle of...
Yeah, something that can be activated.
Yeah.
With that trepidation, I guess, of, playing with one. That's interesting. I compare them to, I say they're no different than like trying to get EVP, recordings with a machine, with a digital recorder. Same thing. You're just trying to get communication from something you can't see.
Yep.
Pendulums, they're fine, but Ouija boards, no.
Well, you don't see as many pendulums on horror movies, so they don't feel like they have...
I'm going to send a dozen emails to people later.
dear film executive, have we got ideas for you? Firstly,
Yes.
ghost cats. Secondly, pendulum.
Coming Sunday, Ghost Cats,
Playing
followed
with
by
pendulums.
The Pendulum.
Is
Ghost
this-
Cats playing with pendulums.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Is the pendulum swinging because it's a ghost cat just batting it back and forth?
Yes. Oh, I love it. I don't even know what we were going to talk about anymore. This is all about ghost cats and pendulums.
We've derailed.
Yeah, that's the greatest part of the show. So you were a weird kid, age 7.
Yep.
You had parents who were into all of this. When did you become sure the magic was real? That you could actually influence something with your will? When did you start playing around with that and actually become sure this is real?
Well, again, when I was a child, so I had a wind chime thing in the corner of my room, which was, this is so 90s. It was glass dolphins in a spiral.
Oh, I've seen those.
Yeah,
in the 90s.
In the 90s, yeah. And I used to sit on my bed, like moving with my hand and like it's staring intently, and it would start to move by itself. Whether it's me or
that's cool.
Yeah, and
that you were a ghost cat. No,
that was very high up for a ghost cat.
Yeah.
It could be, if they levitate. There's another question.
Right.
Do ghost cats levitate? That's terrifying.
Episode 2.
But I was definitely impacting and trying things like that, and just always had a really strong belief in magic. Always. Yeah, always. I remember being quite young and we had religious education lessons. The very Christian teacher did not like me very much. and we had this assignment once to do a creation story. And I think in his head he was like, everybody's going to write some variation of God created the world. And I was like, at first there was chaos and the elements ruled. And the personifications for the elements, right, which I didn't know anything about at the time, and of course you learn all of this later. So yeah, it's always been there. I think as long as I remember, it's never really left. And I think you do go through stages of you are wondering whether or not you're a crazy person believing in it, and you do question it over the years and come back and question it. And
yeah, how do you handle that? How have you navigated that for yourself?
I like the idea of merging science and spirituality. I don't think that you need to separate them. So in a lot of cases, you will find scientific basis for things like energy and vibration and things like that. And that gave me comfort to be like, it's not so far out of the realms of possibility. It's not so fantastical that we haven't got scientific rationale behind a lot of it. And I really liked the idea that, magic is science we don't understand yet.
Yeah.
And so that gave me comfort in those moments as well. Yeah, I think those are the two things that really have still stand with me to this day, that if you are getting to the point where you're wondering, what is wrong with me, or am I completely wrong? But then there's something that's a bit like one of those psychological journeys that we all go through as well, isn't it? And I think that's healthy, because when you believe in something so radically, you become radicalized by it, regardless of what your faith is. So I think that self-doubt can be healthy if it's balanced.
No, that's good. That's fair. I mean, I'm obviously, I think people who listen to the show regularly know I'm not opposed to people being into science. Not at all. I have a show that depends heavily on technology. But there are two black holes a few million light years away colliding.
Mm-hmm.
We know this. And the energy from that is creating ripples in space-time through all of us. It's actually rippling through us right now. If you don't have some solution or like idea of how that impacts you in magic, make something up, because that's fucking awesome. And you should be thinking about things like that. Why wouldn't you? And maybe that's just because I came up through chaos magic, and it is just like my base operating system. So I'm always looking for like the weird stuff that's really in the world that makes stuff extra weird as you go about your business. You know what I mean? Yeah. So tonight, light some candles. Like, black hole ripples.
Tell me what I need to know.
And throw something, I don't know, like smack your hand in a pool of water and divine by the ripple effects.
Keep
try it
handy.
Yeah, try it. Fuck around and find out, kids. This is way more fun than a spell kit at Walmart. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Throw it at the wall, see what sticks.
Yeah, that's a good plan. So in your bio, you say you are a priestess of the Morrigan.
Mm-hmm.
How does that come about? I guess, first of all, who is the Morrigan? For those who don't know. And how does one go about becoming the Morrigan's priestess?
Right.
The first church of the Morrigan.
Goodness no. God, can
Clergy
you imagine?
program.
She'd burn it to the ground. Don't know. Morrigan doesn't care for the church. Anyway, so the Morrigan is a very complex goddess, and I will try my best to summarize, but she is very complicated. So we have mythology about the goddess Morrigan mainly from Irish mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And she is a goddess of war, a goddess of death, a goddess of shapeshifting. These are some of her main traits. I tend to think of her as being a shapeshifter above all else because she impacts the social, political landscape of the land, gets involved, tells prophecies, gets involved directly, shifts her shape into animal and humanoid form, and changes fates and things like that. So this is just some of it, tiniest amount of who she is. And she called me, not the other way around, and has been with me again since I was a child. And honestly, being her priestess is a lot to do with me slowly building up a relationship with her and a dedication with her and creating a path to her that I then started sharing with others. I started sharing the Morrigan's Retreat with others online, and that is looking at the 9 different aspects of who I believe her to be. So it didn't really exist and still kind of doesn't outside of, I guess you could call it personal gnosis. There is no church, there is no body out there that is currently divining people and saying, there you go, you are a priestess of the Morrigan. And a lot of it is very much how I've created and walked with her and learned, and it's not easy because she's not an easy goddess. Say it with love, Mama, don't smite me. And a lot of it is yep, sorry.
Oh no, if you guys, I was just saying it's something you take on yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. What is your goal with that? What do you seek to achieve as the priestess of a Morrigan?
Ooh, sovereignty, empowerment, trying to be the best version of, or no, not the best version. The constantly evolving version of myself, I guess. Trying to heal a lot of the things that I've been through, because, as many people who come to the Morrigan have in common, it doesn't come from a very good place often. They've been through it in one way or another. So there's been a lot of shadow work, a lot of healing, a lot of inner reflection, a lot of rebuilding yourself brick by brick with the Morrigan. And quite often she will dismantle a lot of the things you've put in place to survive, to cope, which can be very difficult when you're going through it. But it ultimately means you're more alive after having done so. You feel more independent, you feel more wild or ferocious or more like yourself, and you're always discovering something else about who you are as a person, a witch, a human being, and your connection to the world and how magic operates and things like that. So there's this sort of adventure and investigation into the spirit world around you when it comes to work with the Morrigan as well.
Now, I'm sure there are people listening who don't know if they're really in connection with a goddess or a god or something, right? How do you experience that? How do you know you're like communicating in some way or receiving some kind of communication or message from the Morrigan? What does that look like to you?
Well, the first thing I always say is when you've heard the Morrigan, there's no mistaking her for anything else. She has an energy of a truck. Bigger than that, energy of a black hole. Maybe it's Morrigan and her black holes. Maybe that's the wiggles that everybody's been.
I'm not making any comment.
She'd claim it. I don't know whether it is or not, but so for me, the way that I've always sort of explained it to people is it feels like when you recall memories, you might get an image in your head, or you might hear it on replay in your head, except for it's not a memory. So it's almost like it's bubbling up from the unconscious, and depending on how you interact with memory, which I think is the life purpose of being alive anyway, so you might see things, you might hear it, you might recall scent, and then you might get, it's not really visions, but I think that's the best way I have of putting it, over what she wants, because I experience the Morrigan in the waking world most of the time. Other people have a lot of dreams about the Morrigan, so when their active mind is shut down, then they're able to process the messages. I've only had 2 or 3 dreams about the Morrigan my entire life, and that's usually when I'm not listening.
Usually when you're not listening.
I
love it.
Life has gotten in the way. Monkey mind is on overdrive, and yeah, you're not listening. So then you'll get messages. Or I did have it once that 7 separate people came to me and went, "I'm really sorry about this, but I've had a message which I think is for you from the Morrigan. Is it okay if I tell you?" 7 people who didn't know each other. And
that's pretty wild.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not listening.
Yeah. That would be pretty unmistakable. Something's going on here. Well, I guess beyond that, I did want to touch on your book a little bit. Let's start with Celtic as a word. You address some of the issues around the challenge of this.
Yep.
So when people see that, I'm sure they have assumptions, but what are you talking about when you say Celtic?
So Celtic is a bit of an umbrella term, which is put to mean mainly European tribes of people, although it's mainly Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and some of the Gaulish Celts, so that's Germany, living at a certain point in history, who had very certain beliefs. So in the modern day, People don't like it as much. But it's a whole argument waiting to happen using the word Celtic. I went back and forth about it. But it taps into kind of like a cultural heritage that runs through Europe. I think you could make arguments for some of the Britons as well, because the other Celtic countries like to be like, yeah, we don't include England, and I'm like, fair, to be honest. Except for Cornwall, which considers itself to be a separate country, pretty much. I love the Cornish so much, but they're considered one of the sort of Celtic tribes as well.
Gotcha. And I've always understood it as a term that identifies more about commonality in language and art and things like that.
Yeah,
more so than necessarily a genetic people or anything of that sort. Now, when people see words like Celtic or Germanic or any Nordic or things like that, there are usually factions out in the world who would say you would have to be descended from these people to participate. I think those people are idiots.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said so.
Yeah. Yes. Often. But I did want to give you the opportunity to make it clear that anyone would be welcome to practice this. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Now, hedge. So the book is called Celtic Hedge Witchcraft. What is the hedge? What are you talking about?
There are a few different ways of interpreting the hedge, which we talk about in the book. So the first and most basic, I suppose, is a hedgerow, which is a physical division mostly in Europe, mainly in the British Isles, and people come on holiday to see English hedgerows, which I did. And they're like bushes, if you like, that are somewhere between man-made and natural, so there's an interesting coexistence between them, and they create little ecosystems in them, and they're used to create borders in fields or between fields and woodlands. And so they're markers of in-between spaces, and like I said, they can become entirely their own little ecosystems, providing shelter and nourishment for all sorts of birds and things. So in the UK, every so often people get up in arms because they're trying to kill off the hedgerows, and it ends up hurting the wildlife.
Yeah.
So that is the physical marker of what a hedge is. And so in one sense, hedge witches were witches who went to these places to perform magic. And then the idea of hopping the hedge was to jump over the hedge into the other world, into a different spirit realm. So that came from a mixture of folklore about actually working at the physical hedges and then sort of going through them or going over them, flying over the hedge, which is lovely. I love the idea of like hopping over the hedge and then you're in a different realm of existence. Sounds
that
great.
Would be fun. If only it were that easy.
I know. Wouldn't that be so much easier? Just find a door, like, yep, off we go. And then for me, I sort of was interested in like expanding that, because I wondered whether and felt strongly that it was a good possibility that hedges used to be part of ancient woodlands that don't exist anymore. So they're almost like the remnants of, or the edges of these ancient woodlands that used to exist and be full of all of this magic.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah, and
that's pretty cool.
Do they have the imprint of that magic in them, right? And so if they exist in the physical world, then they exist in the spiritual world as well, because as above, so below. And as is true in the physical world, so is reflected in the spirit world. So I believe they exist within the spirit realm as well. So you can connect to them, these liminal spaces, even if you cannot physically visit.
I love liminal spaces.
Yeah.
Liminal is my favorite word.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah, it's brilliant. I've been thinking about it a lot lately as well because we're in all of these weird liminal times.
Yeah. I'm a professional hypnotist, and I've even told clients, and just walking through the door, going through that doorway, the fact that you took that step, you've already made a change.
Yep.
Yeah. And doorways are one of the most obvious things, but you just think about like who you are as you go through the door of your own home. Who are you when you exit that door? Who are you when you walk into the door of where you work? Like you are not consistently the same person at the same vibe, the same vibration at all those places.
No.
Like we change state everywhere we go. So those liminal places that are so, like hedgerows and places like that are so obvious something else is going on here. I think just like we change state so easily in just simple doorways, that these other places they trigger something deeper and more sacred, more magical in us to go into a deeper, more sacred, more magical space. So big fan, love it.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No.
No. Okay. Now, you talk about animism in your book, and you also talk about the Hermetic principles.
I did, yeah.
And those are not two ideas that I've often seen discussed together. So, real quick, for animism, what do you for you? Because I've noticed animism is kind of different for different people. What is it for you?
Well, animism for me is that everything has a spirit, everything has a soul, everything has a vibration, everything has an awareness, and that's how we hook into the Hermetic principles a little bit, that everything vibrates.
That everything vibrates.
Everything vibrates. Sometimes not as effectively. I'm gonna pull up what I said about animism. It's been a long day, folks.
That's fair. I'm still thinking about everything vibrates.
Yep.
Colliding black holes.
Yep.
Pendulums, if you hit them hard enough on something.
That's the ghost cats. We covered that. That's not vibrations. That's
ghost cats.
Yeah. That's what we've learned in this podcast, everybody.
Ghost cats.
Yeah. Yeah. This is Joey doing a chapter that says theories of the universe and everything.
Yeah. So here's one thought I always liked with animism is is the river spirit the same water spirit that comes out of my faucet because it's sourced from that river? Is the river that gets dammed to become a lake and then a river again, then another lake? Do the lakes get their own spirit, or is it still that river spirit? Or are there a lot of little water spirits? Are there both?
Probably. I will go with both. Let's But this ties into something that interests me, which is our places sacred and vibrating because they were sacred and vibrating independent of human beings believing, or is the attention and energy that a human being and many human beings given to places helped that place vibrate in a different way?
I think both those things to be true.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, because I think if you go somewhere and see a lot of crows hanging out, there's a good chance you might find something a little liminal about that place too, you know? And the crows told me. I didn't, you know?
Yeah, that's the Morrigan. If it's a whole load of crows, that's the Morrigan. It could be plenty of other deities, to be fair.
That's right. Yeah, crows will take whoever they want. So yeah, that's the cool thing about animism to me, is it still allows a lot of those thought exercises, those experiments, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And at the heart of it, it is, it's everything's got its own vibration, its spirit of some kind. I don't know that everything is just sentient. Is the desk that I'm sitting at, the wood that's on top of it, came from a tree somewhere? Is that tree spirit still attached to this? Or has this become its own desk spirit? I'm the annoying kid.
I kind of love the idea that you've been birthing desk spirits into being, and they're just all like, "Sir, take your trash off the top of me and clean."
Yeah. Yeah, desk spirits are very orderly spirits.
Yep.
They're task managers. They're very helpful. But if the minute you clutter up the desk, you're going to find that you're very chaotic too.
Exactly.
So we've got ghost cats,
Desk spirit.
desk spirits. We're on a roll. I really want people to read your book. I don't want to give away too much of it. I love how you wrote it. The Hermetic Principles. Why would you include the Hermetic Principles, I guess, in a book titled Celtic Hedge Witchcraft?
I went back and forth about this as well, because I knew it could be a point of contention, but technically, as far as I can find, principles in that similar vein do not exist in like a Celtic independent version of them, because a lot of Celtic mythology is storytelling, which I love. I adore storytelling, but there isn't like a structure other than the stuff that's also in the book that you can apply to the breaking down of the universe and putting the universe into like almost, oh God, it's so Virgo, categorizing parts of the universe through rules. So it's a little bit of this kind of mix again of the scientific and the spiritual, looking at how energy vibrates and things like that, to lean on ideas outside of Celtic Hedge Witchery to help us explain in a modern age, because I'm not pretending that we are reliving or in a period of history in which we're not. So it's kind of like we have different tools that we can use to help us look at these concepts and see whether or not they align in the Celtic tradition.
Yeah, I'm in no... I have no rose-colored glasses or romantic notions about the past. I really love an app on my phone that tells me exactly where to look to find certain stars and stuff. Or what leaf is this, so I don't eat it, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
I figured that would be a point that you might get some questions about. It was interesting to see, and you're not alone. You see them. In all fairness, I think you're one of the few I've seen be really open about what they are and where they come from. In your book, you see them mixed in under different names and stuff all the time in other books. They're just ideas that come from like late antiquity, Roman period in Egypt. Is that right? Or are they later from like the Golden Dawn? The Golden Dawn didn't make these things up. They do come from older sources.
I've got a feeling that it's is it Indo-European that it starts, and then the Golden Dawn makes it more popular or more known.
I'm not your guy for Hermetic history.
Yeah.
You want heathenry? I got you. No. That's all right. What
began in Europe and began in Egypt? There we go. I did write it down. I thought
those
I'd check.
Pesky pyramid building people, or did they really build? No, I'm kidding.
He's not.
Cats did it.
Cats did it.
Big fucking cats.
Egyptians revered cats. That's all I'm saying. They knew
for reasons. They had ghost cats too.
Yep.
Lots of them. Hail Bast, right? No. What was I going to say? Oh, what sort of advice would you give someone who's new to witchcraft and things like this? What sort of advice would you give them, I guess, first to get involved? And then secondly, what's something that you really think they should avoid, a possible pitfall?
So when I first got involved in witchcraft, I read everything I could get my hands on, and I think it's a really good exercise. It's a little bit easier, honestly, for me than it is today, just because there is, as we've talked about earlier, a plethora of books now.
When I got started, there was like 4 books.
Yeah. There wasn't as many when I got started. So but I think it's important to read around and listen to different people's points of view and have conversations with people, because I think sometimes having a really good conversation in witchcraft is the most important thing, and be open to different ideas, regardless of whether or not it resonates with you in your soul, in your bones. It might not, but having a conversation and knowing that there are all these different approaches out there, I think, is beneficial, and leads to understanding and good debate and good cats flying across behind you as you record. And I think that's really worthwhile, but also really listen to your own intuition. So if you feel that something is a little bit wonky and you don't trust it and it feels off somewhere, really listen to your intuition as well. I mean, I don't mean completely disregard what everybody is telling you, but if something feels off, you are allowed to question books. You are allowed to question other people's opinions. You are allowed to say, that's not for me. I don't agree with that. Because I think in the beginning, everybody's very hesitant to be even a little bit assertive, because they're like, I don't know, but it feels off. And it's like, that's okay. Yeah. That's okay for beginners. Don't worry about that feeling. And the pitfall is putting anybody on a pedestal. Don't put anybody on a pedestal ever. Because we're all human beings. We're all capable of failing and making mistakes. And nobody is better than anyone else just because they've written a book or 20. And putting people on pedestals,
Cat.
Yeah. Is only, they've only got one way to go, down and fall off and disappoint you. And I think, any kind of hero worship is a bad plan when it comes to stuff in witchcraft.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I could not agree more. And, when it comes to those books and things, it's funny. I was just having this part of a conversation like this earlier today. These are sets of techniques and things and ideas that came through, at minimum, a person who found things that worked for them. And they're sharing it with you. And maybe it's even from established traditions, which things have become more crystallized and may actually not be working great for everyone involved. You never know. Practice what interests you, experiment, and see where you feel called to, what resonates with you, what works for you, and have fun with it. I think that's one of the most important things. You do not have to be so serious all the time. I mean, good grief. Talk about the past. One thing we pretty sure of is there's a lot of naked activity. If nothing else, the very deep ancestors stood out naked under the stars and went ooga booga, and
that's exactly what they said, word for word.
Yep. And that was the first astronomer. So yeah, you're welcome.
That's how we found out about black holes.
Oh, we will not go down that rabbit hole. Jokes.
Nope.
Yeah. That's
cut.
Terrible. And cut. No. Before I let you get out of the regular portion, one thing I like to ask at the end of every regular portion, or near the end, is for those of people like me who like to travel and visit places and find the weird place or the folklore related thing, like what's something really cool around you or somewhere you've lived before that you would recommend anybody into, the witchcraft, the occult or something, like, or ghost hunting or something, like what's something you would say you definitely got to go see this?
Well, absolutely go to Cornwall. I said earlier, I love Cornwall, and there are so many standing stones. There are so many sacred sites. There are so many. The Witchcraft Museum in Tintagel is definitely worth a visit. It's fantastic. I've been there twice in my life, and every time it just gives me chills. But they've also just set up a brand. I can't wait. I haven't been yet, but I'm so excited. They've set up a hedgerow labyrinth in Bodmin Moor, and it's made of ancient Cornish hedge techniques, and it will last 700 years. And they've just opened it, and I can't wait to go and have a look around. So I think that's really interesting.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Can't wait for all the news articles, child goes missing. Person.
There have been news articles already, and they're all positive so far.
Oh, well, okay. If you say so. No.
So far, so good, anyway.
We'll put the shitty people in first. Take them.
All these witches have disappeared.
That's right. You walk in there when you hear all of us out here going, and let the crops be good, ignore it.
Yep. When everybody going in is like, ooga booga. What?
Ooga booga. Black holes. No. All right. This is a good spot to wrap up, I think.
Quick.
Is there something that I should have asked, something you wanted to talk about, get into, promote? Now would be a good place to put that in.
I have no idea. I've got a head full of black holes and ghost cats.
It's your next book. You're welcome.
I know. Yeah. It's a high fantasy. The world began with a purr. Anyway.
Right?
Yeah. I can't think of anything other than you can find me at Starryeyedsupplies.com.
Awesome.
That's me.
All right, cool. Well, all right. I think we'll end the regular portion there and head to the bonus. Thank you so much for being a guest, Joey. It's been awesome talking to you and a lot of fun.
I'm so sorry, but thank you.
No, I'm so sorry. And everyone listening, if you made it this far, thank you. When you make the Ghost Cats show, please let us know. I'd like to see it. Yep. And a pendulum is your number one hunting tool.
Absolutely.
And a little milk bottle on the edge of a table.
Yep.
You heard it here. All right. If y'all want to hear the rest of this conversation, you're going to have to go to patreon.com/weirdwebradio or go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. Thank you as always for listening, and please like, share, comment, do whatever you can to help spread the word, and stay weird, my friends. And now it's bonus audio time. Joey Morris, are you ready?
Yes.
After that, no. Ooga booga. So, first question is always the same. What famous person's resting place would you most like to visit?
Oh.
And why?
Do you want to hear how they just answered that question? What famous person's resting place would you most like to visit? That and many others, including what they think about the afterlife, what they may or may not do in cemeteries, what are their traditions, magical practices that have to do with the dead, folklore that surrounds their homes, and so much more, available for only $5. $5 a month. Even if I make more than one episode in a month, it's still just $5 a month at patreon.com/weirdwebradio or go to weirdwebradio.com and click join the membership. You can find me on Instagram at weirdwebradio. You can find me on Facebook as Weird Web Radio, or come join the new, fun, and exciting Weird Web Radio Facebook group. Thank you again for being here. Stay weird out there, my friends.